Here's a claim I want to prove to you in the next few minutes. Spending more money on your first watch does not automatically get you a better watch. For beginners, it's almost backwards, and I'm going to walk you through 3 tiers of brands, real ones, to show you exactly why. But before we break down those tiers, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment down below and let me know, what was the brand of your very first watch? Or, if you're still hunting for that first real piece, what are you currently leaning towards? I'd love to read your stories. Also, if you're into watches and want to build a solid collection the smart way, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Here's the question I get asked more than any other. What watch brands are actually good? And honestly, it's a fair question. There are thousands of brands out there at every price point, and most of what's sitting in your local jeweler's window or topping the bestseller list on a big online retailer is markup garbage. Built for pennies somewhere far away, sold to you for 10 times that. So don't go into debt for a big Swiss name, and don't just grab whatever's rated highest on Amazon. There's a smarter path, and it doesn't cost what you think. You'll also see plenty of videos out there telling beginners to drop over $1,000 on a first watch. Usually a watch the host happens to sell. That's a bad idea, and honestly, it's a little like telling a brand new driver to learn on a sports car. If you don't know what you like yet, you shouldn't be spending big on a guess. So here's my proof, tier by tier, that a small budget can still get you something genuinely excellent, and every single brand I'm about to walk you through sells real pieces for under $500, often quite a bit less. Let's start with evidence number 1, the big, proven brands. This is where trust is already built in. Take Casio. Founded in the late 1940s in Japan, this is the brand behind decades of legendary digital watches. But people sleep on how deep their analog and dive watch lineup goes too. Their digital line has genuine range, from the classic ultra-thin styles that slide easily under a shirt cuff, all the way to the G-Shock family, which is the one to look at if pure toughness and shock resistance matter more to you than how slim it sits on the wrist. But the one I keep coming back to is the Casio Duro, a proper dive watch with a screw-down crown and 200 meters of water resistance that's deep enough to swim and snorkel in without a second thought. It runs around $50 to $90 depending on where you look, and as far as I'm concerned, there just aren't many serious competitors at that price. Here's the honest caveat though. It's a big watch, over 40 millimeters, so it'll wear large on a smaller wrist, and the design itself is more function than flash. Also worth knowing, Casio's own entry-level pricing has crept up over the last several years, so shop around instead of assuming the sticker on the shelf is the best deal out there. Now here's one that surprised me the first time I really dug into it. Orient. Think of Orient as where Seiko used to sit price-wise about a decade ago. A sister brand that still builds its own mechanical movements in-house, and dollar for dollar, that's a stronger case to make than a lot of what Seiko sells today. Their Kamasu diver is around $375 as of when I checked, with 200 meters of water resistance and a scratch-resistant sapphire crystal. That's the glass that barely scratches, unlike the softer mineral glass on most budget watches. And if diving isn't your thing, the Bambino dress watch, especially the smaller 38mm version, runs somewhere around $250 and honestly looks and feels far more expensive than that. In fact, Orient's diver typically carries double the water resistance of a similarly priced Seiko 5 Sports diver, which is one of the clearest examples I can give you of spending the same money and getting more for it. The catch with Orient, some models have odd strap widths that limit your aftermarket options, and low light visibility isn't as strong as some rivals. Third piece of evidence, Citizen. Over 100 years old and genuinely one of the most innovative watchmakers in history, they built the first titanium watch and the first solar-powered analog watch decades before anyone else touched that tech. Their Tsuyosa line is the one I point people to most. It gives you a sporty, date-just style look. That's the kind of clean, dressy sport design, usually tied to a much pricier Swiss name, for around $400 to $500 depending on the finish. In my opinion, it's one of the easiest wins in this whole tier. If durability in daily wear matters more to you than looks, their ProMaster line is worth a look too. That's their dedicated tool watch collection, built and rated for genuinely rough use rather than just looking the part. The caveat here, Citizen's marketing around scratch resistance on some of their titanium pieces doesn't hold up as well in real testing as the ads suggest, so don't buy purely on that claim. Their model naming is also famously bland, so don't judge a piece by how forgettable its name sounds on the page. So that's Tier 1, 3 brands you can trust blind, with real track records behind them. But the more interesting evidence to me actually lives one tier down, with the small brands nobody's handing you at the mall. Sternglass, out of Germany, builds watches in that clean, minimalist Bauhaus style. Geometric, restrained, the kind of design language you'd expect from names like Nomos that cost several times more. And it's a genuinely hard style to get right. A lot of brands try that stripped-back look and end up with something that just reads as cheap and plain. Sternglass is one of the few that consistently nails it. Their Naos model starts around $300 with a sapphire crystal and a proper steel case, and it's better built and better looking than almost anything you'll find from a fashion brand at the same price. If it were me choosing between a Sternglass and a mall brand fashion watch at the same money, I'd take the Sternglass every time. Just know it's only rated for light splash resistance, not swimming, so it's a looks-first pick, not a tool watch. And a couple of their pricier Swiss movement pieces aren't worth the jump in cost. This next one's a little different. It's a factory brand straight out of China, and it breaks the normal rules of how watches get priced. Most watch brands design their pieces and then pay a factory somewhere overseas to actually build them. And that factory's margin gets baked into your final price. Addy's Dive skips that step entirely. They are the factory, selling direct, mostly through their own site and through AliExpress, which cuts out the retail markup most brands add. You're looking at steel cases, sapphire crystals, and genuinely creative dial designs for well under $150. The trade-off, a lot of their designs are close homages to famous luxury pieces rather than fully original work. And because it ships from overseas, delivery and returns take longer than you're used to with a brand based near you. Same story, different brand, but a notch up. San Martin. 5 years ago, this name started getting real attention from watch reviewers for one reason: the finishing. We're talking brushing and polishing that genuinely rivals watches costing $1,000 or more, in the roughly $200 to $550 range. One standout is a model with a mother-of-pearl dial and a guilloche texture. That's a fine engraved pattern cut into the metal, running somewhere between $325 and $475 depending on the version. Most of their pieces run on solid automatic movements, and a lot of them come on bracelets with hidden micro-adjustment clasps, a feature that used to only show up on watches costing 4 figures and up. The honest caveat: I've seen a handful of reports of stiff bracelet links, so it's not flawless quality control. And again, you're ordering from overseas. Moving up the price ladder slightly, there's Ratio, a Singapore-based brand built by a watch retailer with over 20 years in the business. Their Freediver X is the one worth knowing. Automatic movement, sapphire crystal, 200 meters of water resistance, and a genuinely well-finished ceramic bezel for somewhere around $230 to $320, depending on the color and any current promotion. The case finishing on this thing is, in my opinion, a couple of steps above what Citizen, Seiko, or Orient offer at a similar price, right down to how the bezel clicks feel under your finger. It runs a little thick on the wrist, and the color options are still limited, but it's a strong spec for dollar case. Worth a quick mention before we move on, because these two round out Tier 2 nicely. Wear is a US-assembled brand out of Los Angeles, blending military and surf styling. And pieces like their D5 Pacific Diver run around $600, while punching well above that price in build quality, sapphire crystal, a genuinely nice curved case, and lume that's noticeably stronger than most watches near its price. And then there's RZE, out of Singapore, whose proprietary titanium case material actually scratch-tested better in my own testing than Citizen's heavily marketed super titanium, while staying just as lightweight on the wrist. And unlike a lot of ultra-durable watches, RZE's designs don't sacrifice looks to get there. Both worth a look if Tier 2 has you curious to go further. And now, the piece of evidence that closes the argument. If I had to point beginners to one single brand right now, it's Timex. A decade ago, I wouldn't have said that. Timex used to mean cheap mall counter watches with no real design ambition. That's changed. While plenty of competitors have quietly doubled their prices without doubling the quality, Timex has held its pricing steady and kept leveling up the designs, year after year, at a pace that honestly makes some much bigger brands look complacent. Here's the value comparison moment that sums up the whole tier. Their Marlin Automatic, around $200 as of when I checked, has a domed crystal and a retro dress watch silhouette that, in my opinion, looks like something that should cost over $1,000. And it doesn't. Same story with the Q Timex GMT, roughly $200 to $230. That's a GMT, meaning it tracks a second time zone with an extra hand, a feature usually reserved for watches costing multiples more. Both give you design language that's completely disproportionate to the price tag, and both come in sizes that actually fit a normal wrist instead of towering off the end of your arm. Now the caveat, because I promised you honesty and I'm not dropping that now. The glow-in-the-dark visibility on a lot of non-diver Timex models is weak. Some of their entry-level cases are still brass instead of steel, and their bracelets often skip the fine micro-adjustment holes you'd want for a perfect fit.
Timex also leans hard on sales and promotions to hit its best pricing, so the number you see on a random day isn't always the number you'll actually pay. None of that erases how strong the design-to-price ratio is across the board. It's just worth going in with clear eyes. So here's the case, laid out fully. Tier 1 gives you bulletproof trust with Casio, Orient, and Citizen. Tier 2 gives you the best value per dollar on the planet if you're open to a lesser-known name, from Sterglass's clean design to San Martin's finishing to ratio specs. And Tier 3, the closing argument, is Timex. Proof that the biggest glow-up in affordable watches right now doesn't require a big budget at all. If you're picking your first watch, you genuinely don't need to spend what most starter watch videos tell you to spend. Start with whichever one of these actually speaks to you, not whichever one costs the most. The whole point of this list is that more expensive and better first watch are two completely different questions, and mixing them up is the single most common mistake I see beginners make. So tell me, which of these brands are you starting with? And if you've already got a first watch from one of the names on this list, I want to know in the comments how it's held up. If this breakdown actually helped, stick around and subscribe. There's a lot more of this coming.